Most people carry a quiet fantasy inside them, a version of themselves that feels cleaner, stronger, calmer, more disciplined. A version that wakes early, moves with purpose, finishes what it starts, and somehow never feels tired or distracted. That imagined self is comforting to think about. It gives us hope. But it also carries a hidden danger, because while we wait to become that person all at once, we remain exactly where we are. This is a story about a boy who learned, slowly and painfully, that the distance between an ordinary life and a meaningful one is not crossed in a single bold decision, but in small choices made again and again, long after the excitement fades. His name was Ethan. There was nothing remarkable about him, at least not on the surface. He was not failing, but he was never outstanding either. His grades hovered in the middle. His teachers described him as capable but inconsistent. He had energy, ideas, ambition. What he lacked was follow-through. Ethan spent a great deal of time imagining the future. He imagined becoming disciplined, becoming focused, becoming someone people respected. In his mind, change always arrived in dramatic form. A Monday morning where everything would suddenly click. A burst of motivation that would transform him overnight. Tomorrow, he told himself, I will study seriously. Next week, I will start exercising. This time, I will change everything. Tomorrow always felt close enough to believe in and far enough to delay action. When Ethan tried to act on these promises, he aimed high, too high. He would decide to study for hours, convinced that anything less was pointless. He would plan intense workouts and rigid schedules. For a few days, adrenaline carried him forward. Then fatigue arrived. Resistance crept in. The effort felt heavy. Missing one day turned into missing several, and eventually, the plan collapsed entirely. Each failure added weight to a growing belief that something inside him was broken. That discipline was a trait other people possessed. That consistency belonged to a different kind of person. Slowly, quietly, Ethan began to lower his expectations of himself. One evening, after another day spent avoiding his books and feeling disappointed in himself, Ethan sat with his grandfather on the back porch. The air was warm. The world was quiet. His grandfather was a man who had lived long enough to speak less and listen more. Ethan finally asked the question that had been circling inside him for years. Why can I not change? Why do I keep starting and stopping? Maybe this is just who I am. His grandfather did not answer immediately. He looked out at the yard, at the dry patches of grass, at the stillness of the evening. Then he began telling a story. Long ago, he said, there was a village that lived at the mercy of rain. There were no rivers nearby, no flowing streams. When rain fell, the village survived. When it did not, the land cracked and crops failed. For years, the sky offered nothing. The lake dried into dust. Each day, the villagers gathered to stare upward, waiting. Among them lived a farmer who chose not to wait. He picked up a shovel and began digging a well in his own field. On the first day, he dug only a foot into the ground. People laughed. 1 foot was meaningless when water lay far below. But the farmer returned the next day. And the next, 1 foot each time. The work was slow, often painful. Many days brought no visible progress, while others waited for perfect conditions. He continued. Months passed. Then one morning, water rose from the earth. The grandfather paused and let the story settle. Then he looked at Ethan and spoke gently. You are waiting for rain, he said. You believe change must arrive fully formed, or not at all. When the work feels too large, you do nothing. But life is not transformed by grand plans. It is shaped by what you are willing to repeat when motivation is gone. Ethan listened, uneasy but attentive. The grandfather continued. Digging 100 feet feels impossible, so the villagers never began. Digging 1 foot feels insignificant, so they marked it. But 1 foot repeated daily changes the land. The lesson did not arrive as inspiration. It arrived as relief. The next morning, Ethan did something different. He did not promise to transform his life. He did not plan a perfect routine. He studied for 15 minutes. That was all. He stopped when the time ended. It felt almost pointless. But he repeated it the next day, and the next. He added a small amount of movement. A few exercises. Nothing impressive, nothing exhausting. He resisted the urge to do more, to prove something to himself. Instead, he focused on returning the next day. At first, nothing changed. No one noticed. He did not feel smarter or stronger. The old voice whispered that this was too small to matter. But Ethan remembered the well. He kept digging. Weeks passed. 15 minutes became 20. Then 30. Exercise stopped feeling like a burden and began to feel like part of the day. His mind resisted less. Not because he became stronger, but because the habits became familiar. Months later, something shifted. Ethan no longer thought of himself as someone trying to improve. He thought of himself as someone who showed up. The identity changed first. The results followed quietly. 6 months after that conversation, Ethan was no longer average. Not because he made a heroic effort, but because small actions had compounded. His teachers noticed his focus. His confidence grew, but the greatest change was internal. He no longer waited for motivation. He trusted consistency. The truth is simple, but uncomfortable. We fail not because our goals are too small, but because they are too large to sustain. Our minds resist overwhelm. They crave safety. Small habits feel harmless. That is why they slip past resistance. Extraordinary lives are built the same way wells are dug, 1 foot at a time. When no one is watching, when progress feels invisible. When quitting would be easier. So if you are waiting to become the perfect version of yourself before you begin, consider this. That version is not a starting point. It is a result. You do not need a new personality. You do not need endless motivation. You need one small action you can repeat tomorrow. Take 1 foot today, then return tomorrow. That is how lives change.